County Board of Commissioners formal informal session for August 11th, 2016. It's 10 a.m. Laura, would you lead us in the pledge?
Certainly. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time we have set aside for public comment, a 30-minute time period reserved for public comment. Does it look like we have anybody scheduled to make comment? No? Okay. Then we'll move on to our agenda. Agenda item B under personnel, which is item B1, the consideration of approval of an early step increase for Reva Son. Becky, did you want to comment about this, or do we all understand the rationale behind it?
Were there additional questions on it? It's really just to make the two positions that do the payroll-related work at the same level, and due to the timing of their anniversaries, the employee who was recently reclassified would then be paid more than the existing employee. So I'm trying to just get the two positions lined up.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay. Entertain a motion to approve item B1.
I move approval of B1.
We have a motion to approve item B1. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. On to agenda item B2. That's consideration of approval of the following minutes. April 20th, 2016 for work session, June 30th, 2016 for formal session, July 12th, 2016 informal session, July 14th, 2016 formal session, July 19th, 2016 informal session, and July 21st, 2016 formal session. Motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve item B2. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The motion passes. On to item B3, that's contracts. B3 is consideration of approval of amendment number 2 to an agreement between Yamhill County Health and Human Services and Lutheran Community Services Northwest for parenting education retroactive to July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2017. And just a little background on this. This is an agreement that $873,450 for Oregon Health Plan Services, and then $264,860 for parenting education services. Those amounts are included in the HHS budget. And as far as the amendment number 2 for the parenting education, that includes an increase in staffing to provide parent coaching for our transition treatment and recovery service homes. This is our services program where our parents are learning to deal with their addiction and also raising their children. So that's a 2.6 increase per full-time equivalent and a slight decrease in the overall parenting classes. So anyway, that's what that's all about, and that would be under contract. So I would move approval of item B3.
And then, just one question. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Do we have a motion? I just have a discussion item.
Sure, any further discussion, yeah.
Yeah, we have an existing contract.
Correct.
What is the total change to the contract, dollar-wise?
The total change to the contract is...
These are amendments to an existing contract.
Correct.
Is it the 800 and the 200 that you talked about?
Is
that the increases?
They're not increases. They're the changes to the increase in staffing and a decrease in the parenting classes. So I don't see this. This is not a change.
It was an FTE number instead of...
It's 2.6%.
You might be able to work it back.
Okay. Yeah,
But
it's a decrease in the overall parenting classes.
Right.
But it's an increase in the...
so we're just making...
But it is an
adjustment to
increase in
existing-
FTE overall.
2.6% increase.
You're just making an adjustment to an existing agreement and not adding? That's what I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
It's removal of the vacancy language, it's updating compliance language.
And improving those amounts for the next fiscal year.
Right.
Any
But those are
further?
contracts we've already had in place.
Yes,
It's a continuation of an existing contract through the next year.
okay. So, any further discussion? Okay, none, all right. All those in favor of approving item B3 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next is item B4, consideration of approval of amendment number 7 to an agreement between HHS and Lutheran Community Services Northwest for the Oregon Health Plan Services retroactive to July 1st, 2016 to June 30th, and that includes both of these in that last, what I just explained. So, all those...
So moved.
So moved, okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approval of item B4 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next is item B5, and that's consideration of ratifying the award acceptance letter for the Community Housing Development Award for Day Treatment with Housing Support Services in the amount of $182,619, and that authorizes Silas, Haller, and Steiner to sign the promissory note, trust deed, required escrow documents, and lien on the identified property for the required 30-year term approved by County Council. This is the letter that Silas signed on June 28th, and we approved the board order for this one. He's requesting the authorization to sign the documents that they require in order to give us this money for this particular project, which is the home that has already been purchased. This will go toward that purchase price.
And which one does this go towards?
A duplex.
Okay, the 27th.
Any further questions?
So, Madam Chair, the only thing I would add is we haven't actually seen the promissory notes, trust deeds, or other related documents. Once we get those, I'll review those with Silas, and just wanted to add that if it seemed more appropriate to bring some or another of those documents back to the board, we'd have that discussion then, and then we may need to bring one or another of them back to the board. But this authorization, assuming everything goes as planned, would authorize Silas to go ahead and sign those documents. We'll take a look at it and review those.
So typically Silas is not the one signing these types of...
We've not had this situation before, so that's why we want Christian to look at the documents.
I'm not aware of anyone other than the board signing deeds of trust or promissory notes, or signing off on deeds or other real property-related documents. This one's unique in the sense that the state would like its interest in the property secured, but we're not actually making payments back to them. Their interest is secured in this amount for as long as we continue to use this home for the required purpose. And then after, my understanding is after the 30-year term, then those documents would be satisfied. So it's a little bit different than other real estate transactions we've entered into. I don't expect there to be any major issues. I just wanted to point out we hadn't seen the documents yet, so once we get those from Silas, we'll take a look at them, and if it seems best to bring one or another of them back to the board, that's what Laura and I had talked about.
Yeah, and the
Recommending
final,
that we do at that time.
the final term on this amendment, or this item, says upon approval by county council, so...
Just wanted to point out the fact that they may come back if that seems to make the most sense.
Okay. I will move approval of item
So moved.
B5. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. Item B6, consideration of approval of an agreement between HHS and Alana Bailey for school-based health center services in the amount of $61,260 retroactive to August 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2017. This is, Alana Bailey has agreed to operate and manage the Yamhill Carlton School-Based Health Center, and that was approved. That award was approved by a board order in July 14th, following a competitive bidding process. Now, one of the things in here is that the agreement includes money, $1,000, $1,021 for the purchase of equipment for the school-based health center, and $5,000 for a youth-friendly clinic improvement project. So I asked Silas what that meant, and he said basically that from time to time the state will make these small grants, mini grants available to be spent in these areas. It's to provide a more inviting lobby area, youth magazines, and snacks. But since this is state money that's coming in, it's not money that we have to basically justify. I couldn't justify it if it were county money, but the state is saying, okay, we're going to give you this extra $5,000 to make the clinic more youth-friendly. So,
These school-based clinics, now has the school board, is this something they requested from our Health and Human Services Department, or
we don't do them unless there's a community request or
Okay.
community involvement in
Okay.
these.
They want it, and the state pays for it, and all we are is a pass-through of that. So I'm a strong believer in local control, and if the local school board has requested this, I personally do not agree with these school-based clinics based on the mandates that come down from unelected and non-professional people that control them, but that's not something that we have any jurisdiction over, so I would move approval of this.
Yeah, one of the concerns that, obviously, that I've had about the school-based health clinics is the same thing. However, if you look at what the state mandates are, those would be mandated through a private practitioner or any other clinic. So what we really need to do is focus on some of these mandates that come from the Oregon Health Authority, which, as you point out, is an unelected body, and the state and Oregon Health Authority and the Oregon Health Plan in general. So, yeah, I agree, but since this is pass-through money. So, anyway, we have a motion to approve item B6. Any further
Madam Chair,
discussion?
one other thing I might add is, they seem to have used a contract that we've used in one of these school-based health centers previously. I haven't yet had a chance to take a look at it, so if you could approve the agreement subject to final review and approval by our office, that would be appreciated. I don't expect any material changes, but there may need to be some updates. We did the last one of these 3-4 years ago, so I want to make sure everything is current in the agreement before we go ahead and sign off and pass it along.
Sure.
So do I need to amend my motion?
I would just say with those changes, or if you wanted to make another motion, you could do that as well.
I will amend my motion to the changes brought forth by County Council.
All right, we have a motion to approve item B6 with the additional amendments. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. Next, we have the item B7, which is a resolution, consideration of approval of a resolution to allow for the parameters of the homestead tax exemption as outlined in Senate Bill 1513. And we've looked at this, the letter from Sheriff Svensson and also the other law enforcement and fire agencies that signed on, the Yamhill Police Chief, City of Yamhill Police Chief, which became law in June, and that the bill authorizes the counties to exempt up to $250,000 of assessed value of each homestead owned by a surviving spouse of any fire, professional police, or reserve officer killed in the line of duty.
Madam Chair, I know we've talked a little bit about this, and County Council was going to get some additional information from both the assessor's office to determine exactly how we would put this into effect. And also a number of the counties have, this bill authorized counties to move forward with an order to make this possible. But there are, as you're well aware, I believe that we have a number of surviving spouses of servicemen killed in the line of duty. We do have some provision for property tax reductions for those people, but it's significantly smaller than what is proposed in this bill. And I had asked County Council to see if we can get some feel from around the state what other counties are doing. I know there are a couple of counties at least that have taken this bill and aligned that exemption with what is currently available to veterans. So I would ask that we allow County Council to do some further research prior to taking action on this bill, or on this proposal, if that would be with my fellow commissioners.
Do we need to have the elected tax assessor at the time weigh in on this?
You can certainly have him touch on it if you'd like. I've spoken with him. He's aware of the bill. He is aware of the procedural steps that they would need to go through to put this exemption process in place, preparing application documents and
But I'm not just addressing Senate Bill 1513, but Stan's
if you want to have him
request
come
to
and talk
expand
about,
that, would we have to include him in that process, or do we have?
like I said, I've spoken with him. We talked a little bit about some of the different programs. I don't have all of the details. I could get that, or it might make sense to have him come and, in case you have follow-up questions that I hadn't thought of, then he'd be here to address those. He may be back next week.
If I'm not mistaken, what we're being asked to do is to address and to put in place what Senate Bill 1513 had made a provision for, that the counties had at their discretion to honor the first responders, fire, police, law enforcement, their spouses by allowing this exemption. But I think we might be best served to address this as a separate issue. So in other words, we've got veterans exemptions and we also have senior exemptions, hardship exemptions. Those are different programs that have different parameters that are, at this juncture, this is what they allow. This is just asking us to take a look at how we're going to deal with law enforcement that lose their lives in the line of duty. So can we address this as it is without saying, well, this isn't equal to this and this exemption isn't as much as this one is? It's almost as if we're going to say, well, we're not going to do this because someone else isn't getting.
That is not my issue at all, and I'm totally in favor of this proposal. We are blessed that we have people every day who go out and put their lives on the line to make sure that we have a safe environment in which to live. So I'm certainly not against this. As I understand it, currently there's only one person who would be able to take advantage of this exemption in our county today. So it's not like we're talking major dollars, but I don't want to lose sight. You mentioned exemptions for veterans and seniors. For seniors, it's a deferral, not an exemption. So they can defer those taxes, but then it goes on to the heirs at the time of their death. So that's not an exemption. And for veterans, I believe there are several different ones out there, but I think it's about 15% is as large as it gets on most of those. So there is a significant difference, and I'm not in any way. I'd love to be able to exempt anybody who's given the total sacrifice that our service people have. And obviously, also our first responders. And I'm not saying I'm against passing this, but I'd like to get the information together and make certain that who's affected and is there some way we can reach a balance. And I don't know, I haven't studied enough to know what the veteran exemptions are available to us if we've done what we can. So that's all I'm asking. I'm totally in favor of this, but I think if I'm understanding the wording, we're being asked to do the exemption as it's outlined in the bill, which would be up to $250,000. And then, I'm just saying, should we be differentiating the sacrifice of anybody?
Well, you know, the bill itself, very limited focus on
Right.
law enforcement.
Correct.
And I don't think we dishonor veterans by taking this bill that was already passed in Salem. And the question is before the counties is, do you want to allow for this in your counties? And are we going to do that or not? And then perhaps deal with the veterans issue separately? Because again, if that's something that has to be addressed in Salem, maybe that could be something that we do next legislative session without taking this and this on its own merit. I think what I'm saying is let's address this on its own merit.
Well, unless I'm misunderstanding Commissioner Primicich's statement from earlier, I thought that's what he was talking about. We can do this, but let's keep in mind and move forward looking towards maybe expanding this in a different direction at some point.
Yeah.
I thought we were, he was talking in favor of Senate Bill 1513, but keeping mindful of getting some research done towards potentially doing something even bigger in the future.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that is pretty much what I did say, Commissioner Springer. I was under the understanding that we probably were not going to be looking at this until we had done some of that research. But again, I will restate the fact I'm very much in favor of this bill. Okay, I just want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the number of spouses who are currently living in our county whose husband or wife did make the final sacrifice. And as we do this, I want this, now that this has been brought to this level, we need to continue to focus on taking care of all of those who have sacrificed.
Is this something that we can, in other words, the veterans issue is something that perhaps can be addressed, but as far as this goes, does any addition to the veterans exemptions have to come from a state bill, or is that something we can do on the county level? We can do that ourselves, but then basically deal with this on its own merit.
Yeah, my understanding is that would require a statutory change, but again, I would need to get further detail from the assessor on whether or not there could be any change made to any of those veterans programs at the local level.
So my recommendation would be that we take the recommendation of Senate Bill 1513 and allow for it here in our county, whether it's one person or 10 person, it makes a difference to that one person.
Right.
And then we begin the process of looking into the veterans exemptions and what we can do and what would exist perhaps if we needed to make a change statutorily, which we could do through AOC or work in that regard. So
I would move approval of B7 as written.
okay. We have a motion to approve item B7. Any further discussion?
Yeah, Madam Chair, if you are planning on adopting this resolution, I've got a draft ready which does authorize up to the amount of $250 is authorized under Senate Bill 1513. So I would go ahead and read that resolution
Okay.
at this time. In the manner of providing a tax exemption for the homesteads of surviving spouses of certain public safety officers and implementing Senate Bill 1513, 2016. Board of Commissioners of Yamhill County sat for the transaction county business informal session on Thursday, August 11th, 2016 at 10 a.m. in room 32 of the courthouse. Commissioners Mary Starrett, Stan Privacich, and Alan Springer being present. Whereas the Oregon Legislature has enacted Senate Bill 1513, 2016, which states that a county may provide by ordinance or resolution for an ad valorem property tax exemption of up to $250,000 of assessed value on the homestead of the surviving spouses of certain public safety officers as provided under Senate Bill 1513. Whereas the board desires to provide for such an ad valorem property tax exemption of up to $250,000 of assessed value on the homestead of surviving spouses of certain public safety officers as provided in Senate Bill 1513. Now, therefore, it's ordered and resolved by the board as follows, that the surviving spouses, as that term is defined in Senate Bill 1513, of a fire service professional, police officer, and reserve officer, as those terms are defined in Senate Bill 1513, seeking an exemption pursuant to Senate Bill 1513 up to $250,000 of assessed value of the homestead, as that term is defined in Senate Bill 1513, shall be exempt from ad valorem property taxes imposed by all taxing jurisdictions on the qualifying homestead. Item 2, such exemption shall be granted provided the surviving spouse satisfies all other applicable exemption application requirements and criteria as set forth in Senate Bill 1513 or as otherwise established in accordance with Senate Bill 1513 by the Yamhill County Assessor's Office. Done in McMinnville, Oregon, this 11th day of August 2016.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the consideration of the resolution to allow for the parameters of the homestead tax exemption. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously. Old business C, we have none. Other business D, we have none. Public hearings, we have none. This time we'll open the executive session pursuant to ORS 192-660.
You